Hey everyone, it's Jake's Metal Chat. Hope you're all well and welcome to episode 69 of my Metal Vault, where I will be exploring and showing you my favorite albums within heavy metal to thrash metal to death metal, black metal, doom metal, sludge metal, folk metal, you name it. All of that excellent stuff, as well as talking about the albums. I will also be talking about the band, so a brief history and any releases leading up to the album that I have picked. Oh, there you go. Oh, God. Every time I say that, always out of breath, forget to breathe. And it's been a while since I did one. And I thought to myself, I was just going to cover one album from this band, but I thought I got both albums here, so I'm going to cover them both. And it's a band from, well, I'm from here in England, the UK, Bristol. And everyone knows this band. If you don't, check them out. I highly recommend them. A lot of the members are now spread out. There is only one original member left in this band who is from Bristol, but currently lives in another part of the UK. And the band that I'm talking about is Onslaught. And both of these albums here, let me just get that one there ready to show you when I get to it. These guys, and I'll go into more into this. Actually, before I talk about that, let's show off the albums. And like I said, if you've not heard this band before, I highly recommend that you check them out. Whichever album you come across first, put it on and just give it a really good listen. But all started with these two albums right here. Once again, this is Onslaught, and I have their 1985 debut, Power from Hell, and their 1986 album, their second album, The Force. Now, both both excellent albums, and start off with this one. Let's show you the cover. I'll get the booklet out so I can now show you the back, the CD. I'll show the back one time. I don't think I showed that properly. There you go. And you can see the songs and who is on the album. And for those names you will see on the other album as well. There's the artwork and lyrics. You know, I like albums where it's some of the artwork and mostly lyrics, which is cool. Some, if it's like a re-release, it will show like all band pictures and stuff and comments from each band member. But yeah, this is the debut. I'll show off the Force. And four of those were on the previous album I just showed. Of course, they brought in this fine gentleman on vocals, who I will get into who he is and so on and so on with everyone else on this album, of course. Of course, the back of the album again, the CD, artwork, who's on the album, and the band picture again with the logo right there on the side. And whew, yeah, this band here, they've been around since the early 80s, and I will get on to when they formed and when they are currently. So let's talk about Onslaught. They formed in 1982 here in Bristol, and they were not a thrash metal band from the beginning. Oh no. For anyone that is still a fan of these guys from the very beginning, they were a punk band, a hardcore punk band. And man, and I didn't know that at first when I found out about Onslaught, because how I found out about Onslaught was before my channel was what it is now, I did a Q&A and someone asked, since I'm from Bristol, have do I know Onslaught? Well, have I heard of Onslaught? And I said no. And he said, you should. And I checked him out and I found some old footage of him at a festival back in '86, I want to say. If I can find it, it'll be in the description below. And man, I haven't looked back since. Yeah, it started out as a hardcore punk band and released various demos, which we will be talking about here, before shifting to their more well-known thrash metal approach, which of course later came on with their debut, which I'm going to go into in a minute. Of course, there was another band with the same name, but it's not to be confused with this one, and there's nothing on this one that I can find. That the one that not to be confused with the Onslaught we know. And of course, some of the members from the debut changed over to different instruments, which I will talk about in a minute. So, yeah, basically on the debut, which we will get to in a minute, some of the members were either playing the instrument that they started out with and then changed to a different instrument, or they were the vocalist and then swapped from being vocals to playing one of the various instruments, being a guitarist or a bassist. But let's start off with, well, they're currently on Reigning Phoenix Music, which specializes in, uh, judging by the bands, a lot of heavy metal, progressive power, yeah, progressive metal, like be it power metal, death metal, doom metal, black and death metal. I got because God Dethroned on here as well, being black and death metal. Opeth, and the vocalist on the second album is a massive fan of the band. How do I know? Because I do know the man personally. Anyway, demo from 1983 called Demo Number One. Independent release, and there is one with you. And I don't think I've heard a lot of their punk stuff. I might have heard one or two tracks, but the vocalist on here was someone called Jace Pope, who I think, yeah, was only the vocalist on that particular demo and was in another band that's not currently on the Metal Archives. The bass player for this lineup was Paul Dickey Hill. That is his nickname because it sometimes puts their nicknames with their names. So Paul Hill was the bass player from 82 to 83. And where's Jace? He was vocalist 82 to 83. The only two that were on here for the other releases, obviously, is Steve, who was the original drummer from 82 to 91, and then 2004 to 2011. So last album he was on was their Sounds of Violence album, Sounds of Violence, and is currently in a band called Insult. So that's the lineup for that demo, and it's the same until their debut. I could be wrong on that, but let's have a look on. But when I was looking, it was all the same lineup for the demos. So demo number 2 from 1983, not totally sure when in 1983 it came out, but the vocalist changed to someone called Roger Davis, who was the vocalist from 1983 to 1984 and is from St. Ives in Cornwall. Because most members in this band would be from here in Bristol. So Nige, again, not Nige Rocket, was the lead guitarist from 82 to 91 and then became the rhythm guitarist in 2004 once the band reformed. Paul Davis was the bassist from 83 to 84 and Steve was still the drummer from 82 to 91 and of course when I said 2004 to 2011. Next demo from 83, 29th of October 1983 saw the release of What Lies Ahead, which was a 12-track demo. And of course, the same lineup that it was from the 1980, the second 1983 demo. And this one is called, well, when I was looking this up, what the second demo, the sorry, the fourth demo is called demo number 6. And you might be a bit confused when I say the next one later on before I get to the debut. So yeah, demo 6, released in 1984, not sure when. Still the same lineup as it was on the other demos. Then we have Foxhole from 1984, which again, same lineup. And then Hatred Towards the System, again the same lineup with Roger on vocals, Paul and on the bass. Persons Unknown was a split that they did with Maniac, Indecent Assault, Feud, and Anathema, not the Doom Death, then later on alternative rock band. Not alternative, more progressive rock, sorry. So from Doom Death to progressive rock, not that band, a different band. And the last demo was called demo number 5. So you're probably thinking, why was the fourth demo called demo number 6 and the last one called number 5? Don't know if that was intentional, but yeah. Okay. And the last one was released on the 2nd November 1984. All independent releases of the demo, and I think the Persons Unknown demo split was, and the label's called LOL Tapes. And not sure when it was founded, when it closed. It says it's closed now. I'm not sure when it founded, but the only band that was on that label was Onslaught, as well as the other bands that would be on there, because I think it might be more on the punk side of music. Now let's get on to the debut, where the lineup is different. So Power from Hell. What do we have with Power from Hell? Well, so of course all their stuff would have been more punk, more the demo stuff, but I think gradually started getting more what this album ended up becoming, which is more thrash, which was released on Children of the Revolution Records, which was more punk rock, because this is still kind of punky, this album. So the bands that were on this label here, and I'll get into them quickly, is Concrete Socks, Sacrilege, The Accused, and Vicious Circle. Now, Concrete Socks were crossover thrash metal, crust punk, having been around since 2013, but still a band that I would highly recommend you check out if you love your crossover thrash metal and you love your crust punk as well. The Accused are still going today, thrash metal crossover since 1981. Vicious Circle from Melbourne, Australia. Thrash metal crossover hardcore punk, so it makes a lot of sense. Sacrilege, everyone knows Sacrilege. Crust punk, thrash metal, and then became doom metal later on. And of course, who I'm talking about here, Onslaught. And this record label was based here in Bristol. Of course, no longer open, and I'm not sure who owned it. But yeah, they only had 5 bands on here, and 2 of which from outside of the UK. Those being The Accused and Vicious Circle. Now let's talk about this album. Who was on it? So Paul Mahoney was the vocalist on this album, but when we get onto the second one, he ended up playing the bass. But for this one, strictly vocals. And he did lyrics for tracks 5 and 6. Nige did vocals for tracks 5 and 6. Guitar, lyrics, obviously played the guitar on here, all the guitar. Did lyrics for tracks 1 to 5 through 9, 5 to 9, and 11. And then we have Jason Stollard on the bass. Later on, played guitar for the second album. And is currently also in the band Insult. And the last one on here, of course, Steve, who, of course, was the drummer throughout the last few demos, pretty much after the first one. And all started with this one right here. So that's who's in the band. Who did what on it? So lyrics. So Paul Hill did the lyrics for track number 3. Yep, found you. And Les Hunt did the producing. Was in 2 bands himself, one of which was Discharge, and everyone knows Discharge, and are still currently going today. Hardcore punk legends. Did music, did engineering for Angel Witch as well as Onslaught, and 2 other bands that I'm not totally familiar with. Reincarnate, and Surface. Don't know those bands, but I'll give them a listen. We have Steve Woolley, who did the artwork. And for the engineering, that was Des Parton. And this was the only thing. Might have done more stuff, but in terms of metal, this would be the only one. Now let's quickly get through these songs. So if this was on like a vinyl, it would be sides. So side A would be called Death. So we have Domination, which was 36 seconds long, so pretty much more on the on that punk aspect, because a lot of songs from punk would have been like 30 odd seconds long, a minute long, 2 minutes long. And then it gets on to basically what they ended up being, which was thrash metal. So we have, which is called Onslaught. The second track is called Onslaught, Power from Hell. That's the title track. Of course, the title of the album. And yeah, just pretty much throughout every song, it's just intense thrash. And we have Nuclear Devastation. I think I just said the first name wrong, but that's a 1 minute 31 second song. So still keeping with the punk attitude there with that speedness. And then Skull Crusher number 1, which is an instrumental, being 4 minutes 39 seconds long. Lord of Evil, which is over, which is 7 minutes 7 seconds. And then the last song called Death Metal. Now I've talked about Possessed on here, and of course one of their songs is called Death Metal. Of course, they had it on one of the demos, and of course on their debut, Seven Churches. And then the other half, if it was a vinyl, of course the CD, that would be the next one would be Angels of Death. Carrying on from where, again, if you were listening to on vinyl, where the first side left off, and then the Devil's Legion. Steel meets Steel, Skull Crusher 2, Witch Hunt, and Mighty Embrace, which is the 58-second instrumental, and that ends this album perfectly. I've heard this a lot when I go to Black City Records, which is where I found this CD, and it is such a great album. Just when you listen to the whole album, it's just intense thrash metal, but it still has that punk attitude to it. And everything on it, like, of course, when I get to the second album, those longer songs are there, but there's only that one really long song on this album, which is the longest one on this album. Do I highly recommend this? Of course I do. And of course, as we're talking about albums by this band, so after which, as I mentioned, Paul went on to play bass, And Jace went on to play guitar for the next album, The Force. Now, who's on this album? And I'll get on to who did producing engineering. So cover art was Mez, who's done cover art for the Anathema that we know, which is the doom death metal progressive atmospheric rock band, who of course split up in 2020. Also did stuff for Battle Axe, Cradle of Filth, English Dogs, Entombed, Exciter, Merciful Fate. I was going to say something else then. Merciful Fate, My Dying Bride, of course, Onslaught, and Virgin Steel, just to name a few right there. Dave Def Pine did the produced and engineered this album, as well as Death Before Dishonor by The Exploited. So worked on not just a thrash metal album, but also a punk album. Roy Rowland did the mixing for this album, as well for Creator, Sabat. You know, because of course there's two bands with that name. Of course, the one still currently going is from Japan, who I have mentioned on here. And of course, for this Sabat, he did History of a Time to Come and my favorite album, Dream Weaver, Satan, Seventh Angel, Testament, and one of my favorite albums by Testament, Practice What You Preach. Yeah, and if you're more into your heavy metal, your new wave of British heavy metals, saying that too quick, check out Satan if you're more into that. But if you're more into thrash, you are in the right area. Nige did the design for this for the album, and Steve did additional assistance for this. Now, who's in the band? Of course, I mentioned Jace Stollard, who was bassist on this album. Steve still playing the drums, and then Paul. If I go there, you can see his name right there, Paul Mahoney on vocals. Nige on the lead guitar, because Jace went on to rhythm guitar and did songwriting for track number 5, which we will get into in the tracks. And in terms of the vocalist, Cersei Keeler, as we call him at Black City Records, Cersei. Really, really cool guy. Like I said, I know him personally, and getting to know him the over the years. So I met him, I think about 2013, maybe 2014. And yeah, this was the album he appeared on first. The last album would have been where is it? The last one. I'll get back to that in a minute. Where is it? Generation Antichrist would have been the last one, I believe. No, they have David Garrett, who I was going to say, is he from Boris Stampede? Yes, he is from Boris Stampede, which is a band I've not checked out in a while. So the last album he would have been on was, nope, not one, was 6. Yep. The last album he was on was back in 2013. But as well as doing this album, he also did he do the EP? I'm gonna just double check. Did he? No. So the last one he was on was number 6. But let's get back to the first album he was on. And his vocals on this are just insane. He has that really aggressive style like you would hear in a lot of thrash metal. Like when I think a lot of thrash metal bands like that, I think more like the German side of thrash metal, and there's going to be quite a few bands from here in the UK and even America that also do that aggressive, raspy style of vocals. But as well as doing that, he can hit those highs. If you heard this album, you know what I'm on about. So let's get on to the tracks. Let There Be Death, one of my favorite tracks. Just like I mentioned with his vocals, he's just hitting those highs completely. And then it gets onto Metal Forces carrying on from there, just keeping that intense, brash metal sound going. Then still continuing on with Fight with the Beast, which, like I said, when I mentioned non-sons, there's a lot of non-sons on here. The longest one is track number 5. But if this was the vinyl, there's only 3 tracks on the first side of it, which I just mentioned those 3. Side B, and on the CD, which would be track number 4, Demonic. Again, excellent guitar riffs, leads, excellent bass work, and the drumming as well, excellent there. All excellent instrumentation. Size vocals still just hard hitting, and when he does those highs, you got to do this. Flaming the Antichrist, just carrying on. Longest song on here being 7 minutes 49 seconds. And then Contracting Blood, which is now one of my favorites, along with Metal Forces and Let There Be Death. And to end this off, carrying on from Contracting Blood, which just again everything that you got from every other from the start of this album, just excellent instrumentation, size, aggressive style of vocals, and those highs are just insane. And the last one, and if you are a thrash metal fan, this will speak to you. Thrash Till Death. Excellent, excellent song to close off an already excellent album. And well done to every single one of these guys for putting that together. All the songs, and of course, all of the guys with the engineering, the mixing, the mastering, everything. It's done so well. And of course, like I said, this has still got a bit of a punk edge to it. A little bit of punk in there still. Hardly any on this one. Is getting more to what they are known for today, which is more thrash metal. And like I said, there's still 4 members on here, which would be. Let me put that down. So the so him, and him, and I believe that one's Nige there. Those 4 were on this one. But like I said, Paul went on to bass and Jace went on to guitar and brought in Psy on vocals. And this was the only one he did because he was also on, let's see, he was on the EP Let There Be Rock, which had 2 new members. Rob on guitar from 87 to 91, and Jim on the bass from 88 to 91 and 2004 to 2006. And has a brother who I thought was in this band, wasn't. But yeah, Jim has a brother called, let's look him up again, John, who is in a band with him called More Death and Horror, which is what exactly? Thrash progressive metal. And of course, the last one, I'm trying to think, the last release that Psy would have been on was, yeah, the EP, because they ended up getting a new vocalist in, Steve, who sadly passed away in 2022. And you'll probably know who I'm on about if you got that album In Search of, what was it? In Search of Sanity. You probably know who the vocalist is because he used to be in a band called Grim Reaper. But yeah, and then Psy came back in 2004, and the first album he appeared on after the band reformed was Killing Peace, which has my favorite track, which is the title track, Killing Peace. As well as, Burns, awesome track as well. But let's get back to this. All started here with Psy on vocals, and there is footage of these guys back in at some festival. If I can find it, it will be in the description below, so you can have a listen. You can have a watch of that, and seeing Psy hitting those vocals like he does on this album and the albums he was on before he left in 2020. But yeah, if you've met Psy before and had a good chat with him, just one of the nicest guys in the world. And I mentioned before, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but or I might have done already, that he's a massive fan of Opeth. Loves that band. And just thought I'd put a little bit of a fact in there. And yeah, if you've not heard any of these albums yet, I highly recommend that you do, because my overall conclusions of these albums, they are heavy, intense, fast, aggressive, thrash from the mid 80s. All very different. More still got that punk edge, but very much in that vein of thrash metal, that thrash metal sound that they have now. More thrash metal and carrying that on. But of course, like I said, there's four guys on this album that were on this one. Obviously, roles were swapped, two of which, like I said, Paul was on vocals and Jace was on bass. Paul went on bass for this one and Jace went on for guitar. Both transitioned to those roles very well for these releases. And most importantly, they are timeless classics. And I say that a lot for a lot of these albums that I've mentioned, and I'm going to continue to say it because they are. If you've not heard them, that I do highly recommend that you go and check them out. If you are more on your thrash metal, if you're more into your thrash, you're more on the thrashier side of metal, which is what I'm probably trying to say there. But either way, I mean, a lot of people might have heard this one first, for all I know, or you might have been a fan from the very beginning, and this is the one you started out with, and then found this one, and then for all I know, there is someone watching this, and they have been a fan of Onslaught since the very beginning, since their hardcore punk days. And I'm actually gonna find some, because I know a lot of their demos will be floating around somewhere here on YouTube, and I'm gonna have a good old listen to them and like very much different from the more thrash approach. So they pretty much transitioned from one fast, aggressive style of music to another. So yeah, a very smooth transition right there. And you know what? These guys pulled it off really well, because some bands, they transition from one style that they started with and then they go to something else. Some of which I'm not a fan of the very least. But the ones that I think done it really well, obviously these guys did. My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, Anathema, Amorphis, just to name four right now, who pulled that off very well, going from like being death metal or death doom to more of a gothic sound, more of a progressive sound, progressive side of metal, but still keeping that heaviness in there. And they still have that heaviness here. It's just, it's not hardcore punk, it's thrash metal. So they've gone from hardcore punk to thrash metal, and it's done very well for these albums. So, anyone watching this, you're not familiar with Onslaught, go check them out. If you see them at a festival, I don't know if they got any festivals currently for next year, but if they do, Go check him out. And I saw him in 2016 here in Bristol at the Fleece do this in its entirety. So 30 years of this album. Be cool to see this played live in its entirety. I know the lineup would be different, but it'll still be cool. But if you've not heard this one yet, I mean, this one's heavy and intense and dark, but it's start with this one. This one's quite dark to be honest, in terms of its heaviness. It's like wow. Just Paul's vocals on this are just harsh and evil sounding and size is very evil sounding as well. And you put those highs in there, and it just is like, whoa, where did that come from? But yeah, love both vocalists. I like the style of Cy Keeler here, and oops, just hit the microphone. And I also like the style of Paul Wright here as well. I like when vocalists can mix aggressive style vocals with high vocals, and those who just keep that evil, intense sounding style of vocals in there as well. That very aggressive sounding thrash metal vocals. So think like Sodom, Creator, Destruction. Those are the bands I go to when I think harsher sounding vocals for thrash metal. Is those bands. And Paul's got a little bit of that in this. Sai has that as well. But if you heard him live, you know how well he balances those two out, and it's just really good. I'm not so saying that because I know him. I'm saying that because he is a talented vocalist. Everyone on this album is talented in their respected instruments. And of course, it's the same for on this one. All did a really good job on this album before doing this one. So once again, timeless classics right here, heavy, intense, just excellent instrumentation, excellent vocals on both albums. Um, yeah, just really, really cool albums. So once again, we have Onslaught with Power from Hell and The Force. Not heard them yet? Go check these out in the description below. And that is it for episode 69 of my Metal Vault. That's been another episode. Sorry this one took longer. Was meant to do it yesterday. On Friday, it's Saturday, currently just gone 10 o'clock in the evening here. And gonna have one more for this year, and that will be it for that one. And then I'll continue the series next year. Thank you for always tuning into this series. Of course, for the next lot of episodes, I will be showing more albums from the 1970s. So a lot of the earlier proto heavy metal, early heavy metal, proto heavy metal, proto doom metal stuff. Because I think that would be cool to see where not the bands I have mentioned, some of which would have got an influence from some of those bands. But a lot of the stuff I show here is mainly death metal and thrash and black metal. I haven't shown a lot of folk metal lately, but hoping to find some more folk metal bands from the 90s as well as the early 2000s. But yep, I thought I'd do another album with another video, another episode with two albums. Because I did that with Sugar. And there will be more like that in later episodes. Of course, I did that with Metallica, Kill Them All, Ride the Lightning, and Master of Puppets. Of course, with the help from Chris of Crushing Sounds. And yeah, before I blab on too much like I normally do at the end of these episodes, I will let you get on with the rest of your day, evening, wherever you are in the world. And don't forget to like this video, share it around, comment down below if you have been a fan of Onslaught since the very beginning, or you got into them when they became a thrash metal band, or didn't get into them until much later. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all of the episodes that I have coming up for my Metal Vault. I got one more this year, and that will be it for this year. For all I know, do I might do another 5, 6 episodes, but if I end on the last one, then that will be it. And of course, my last collection update video, as well as, just to mention it here briefly, my favorite albums from this year. Some of which I still don't currently own in my collection, but the ones that I do will be shown in. Actually, most of them I'm going to be shown in my collection update video anyway. But I might end up doing a list either end of this year or next year. Don't know yet. But either way, thank you for tuning in. As always, I've been Jake's Metal Chat. Keep the banner of metal well and truly high. And I will see you all in another episode of my Metal Vault.